What's going on, guys, in the works? And it's been a while since we've had an in the works video. I know you guys have been asking me where the heck I've been, but I actually had some computer issues, got those squared away. But I actually got a pretty interesting video for you guys today. It's definitely going to be worth the wait because we're going to talk about one of the most requested video topics that I get, and that is Battlefield 3 versus Battlefield 4. I guess you could even call this a little mini showdown between the two games. And for the first time ever, I played Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 3 in the same evening. And I hadn't done that since the release of Battlefield 4. And I think it makes it more interesting, I guess, when you're trying to compare these two, when you play them back to back like that, because you notice the subtle differences, you notice the major problems with each game, and it gave me a more in-depth feeling on which one I think had some advantages over the other ones. And I was wondering, are we maybe a little bit too tough on Battlefield 4? I mean, it's no doubt that they have their issues with the game. I think a lot of people will agree with that. And yes, I am using the staff shell, and I feel really dirty about it. But since DICE has basically said that they will not be fixing the staff shell glitch, unfortunately, it is here to stay. If you are a tanker, you know exactly what I mean. But, if you can't beat them, you got to join them, unfortunately. But anyways, back to the topic. After playing both games in a pretty long session, I had some really awesome matches on Battlefield 3. I had a pretty good session on Battlefield 4, but I felt like I was better off talking about it now than I had been in the past because I hadn't really played a lot of Battlefield 3. Didn't really see a reason to, Battlefield 4 was out, no reason to go back to Battlefield 3. So I hopped back on there, and one thing that stood out to me was map design. There is a huge difference between the Battlefield 4 map design and the Battlefield 3 map design. And what I mean by that is it seems like there's less clutter in Battlefield 4. And if you're looking at, like, let's say the Aftermath maps, let's cut to some Battlefield 3 footage so you get an idea what I mean. This is TDM here on Epicenter. There's a lot of areas that are just pointless. And what I mean by pointless, it's just areas where they can hide in, weird little corridors where people will sit on their ammo boxes with claymores, a lot of camping spots. Now, that's not to say there's not camping spots in Battlefield 4, but it definitely was a pretty big problem. If you think back to it, camping in these dark little corners, that was pretty common in Battlefield 3. I don't see it as much in Battlefield 4. Now, there's several reasons for that. First of all, the map design, they took a completely different school of thought. There's not a lot of maps that are just this urban feeling. There's not a lot of, like, little nooks and crannies like there were in Battlefield 3, which I think is a good thing. Now, I'm not going to sit here and argue about, which game had better maps. I think they both have really strong maps and they both have really bad maps. But as far as the overall map design and the school of thought when map design, I actually think Battlefield 4 did a really good job. And I would like to see some of the bad maps from Battlefield 4 removed from the game and some of the good maps from Battlefield 3 put into the game. I think we would have the perfect little harmony there. But one of the most popular conversation topics is netcode. We talk about it in every video, and here's a great example of it right there. And if you didn't really see what happened there, the dude was jumping, he went behind the wall, he probably got past the wall, and then he dropped dead. And you're like, well, that was pretty common in Battlefield 3. And you hit the nail on the head if you thought that, because it was very common. And it's something I think we take for granted here in Battlefield 4. Is netcode really frustrating? Absolutely. Was it frustrating in Battlefield 3? Absolutely. Now, I will admit Battlefield 3's is much better. I don't think anyone will argue against that. But I think for the majority of us, we know that Battlefield 3 had a lot of improvements that needed to be made on the hit detection side of things. And they promised us, I remember the interview, they were like, the netcode here with Battlefield 4 is 10 times better than Battlefield 3. And instead, we didn't really get that. So there's no point in lingering on this topic too long because I think most of us would take the BF3 netcode in a heartbeat over what we have in Battlefield 4. But the next thing I want to talk about is vehicle balance. And we're going to go right back into that Silk Road gameplay because, I like tanking. That is what I do. I am a tanker. And I recently had a discussion with some of my buddies about vehicle balance in Battlefield 4 and comparing it to kind of how Battlefield 3 is. And, Battlefield 3 vehicles were very powerful. In some of the footage that I got from last night, you can see that we were just getting destroyed by air vehicles. There were people in the game in jets that were going 110 to like 5. You had a couple people just floating in the helicopter shooting TV missiles at stuff from the spawn on Caspian border. There are a lot of really glaring issues with vehicle balance in Battlefield 3. I mean, look at the attack chopper. It was super powerful, and then they nerfed the gunner flare. They kind of brought it back down to earth. And on thinking about that, after playing a lot of Battlefield 4, I think that nerf makes a lot of sense. I was very much against it when they first did it, But then I looked at how they took the attack chopper in Battlefield 4 and took it in a completely different direction. I was like, man, I would love to have the Battlefield 3 chopper back because it was balanced. You know, a team of people with stingers could take that thing down really quickly. You know, the AA in Battlefield 4 is ridiculous. It could take it down really quickly. So there's a lot more factors of taking out vehicles in Battlefield 4 versus Battlefield 3. And it's almost like, you know, we have the complete flip side of the spectrum. Tanks are a lot weaker, in my opinion. They move a little bit slower. They don't seem as nimble. They don't seem as powerful. Granted, you cannot get disabled now, which is actually a pretty big advantage, and I do like that mechanic. I like the critical hit thing. I think that's kind of cool. But it's a lot easier to destroy tanks, because here's the reason why. There's things like Staff Shell, which you see me using. There's things like the MBT Law. There's all sorts of different types of launchers. There's SRAs, which you can't actually predict them coming at you because they move so slow, and sometimes APS doesn't work. There's just a lot more factors that you as a vehicle driver and or pilot have to think about when flying or driving a vehicle. And I don't know if that's necessarily what they really wanted out of it. So I think in terms of vehicle balancing, neither game actually got it right. You know, you've got Battlefield 3, which vehicles weren't really that balanced. They were very difficult to take out. And Battlefield 4, everybody runs Engineer because they're really easy to take out vehicles, but there's so many of them that you're forced to run Engineer. It's kind of a weird dynamic. It's almost like they gimped vehicles in order to provide more of them, but at the same time they created this weird complex where you've got to always run Engineer in fear of a tank rolling up on you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So, you know, there's a lot of game theory type things out there. I'm not a game designer. I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why they did it, but I think after all the time I've spent on Battlefield 3, all the time I've spent in Battlefield 4, you know, just the Battlefield series in general, I don't think either game got it right in the vehicle department. I think they could have just come to the middle in that, and we would have been fine. Honestly, I think the root of the problem with vehicles is the fact that they included so many different launchers, especially the smart lock-on launchers, that they felt like they had to change around the way the vehicles work. Like I mentioned, most people are going to run the same thing in the tank. They're going to run APS, Sabo, or AP rounds. Sometimes you see some HE shells, and then they'll have Staff Shell, especially if it's a high vehicle map, because it's honestly the most important thing that you have to worry about when you're in the tank is other vehicles coming at you. If you've got a good gunner, you've got him to deal with the infantry, and you can also kill him with the Staff Shell if you're good with it. So you'll see a lot of people running that. You know, APS, that's a gimme. You don't see anybody running Smoke Cloud or, you know, the infrared smoke or anything like that. Mostly it's just that loadout, and I think that goes to show you just how unbalanced the vehicles are. But, you know, other than that, I want to kind of wrap this up talking about the pros and cons of it and talk a little bit about the actual game. Because I think that Battlefield 4 gets a harder time than maybe it deserves. Because I referenced we played a Caspian border game where it seemed like we were just getting destroyed by vehicle onslaught. You know, we played a game before that where nobody was playing as a team, everyone was camping. And I think the one thing that Battlefield 4 got right is they pushed the action in the right direction. Can you get on a really crappy team that just sits in the back in Battlefield 4? Absolutely. But I think in terms of the flow of the game, it worked a lot better. I can't really put my finger on it. I'm sure some of you guys probably know what I mean, but I think if we were to take out some of the problems that we kind of regressed on here in Battlefield 4 and put the good aspects that we had from Battlefield 3 together in a game, we'd have the perfect harmony, and we would have gotten the game that we really wanted. So I think we do give Battlefield 4 a tough time, and some things are deserved, some things it's not deserved. You know, you're going to see the people that leave the comments, fix the game, because that's just how the gaming community is. It's a very bipolar community. It's a very what have you done for me lately type thing. Which is fair. I mean, investing $60 is a huge investment for a lot of people, let alone $120 for Premium and Battlefield 4. So they want to feel like they get their money's worth in a game, and I don't blame them. Don't blame them whatsoever. But I do think that there's a lot of different things that we can consider here. So let me know what you guys think. Which game do you think was actually better? Do you enjoy Battlefield 3 or do you enjoy Battlefield 4? Or do you enjoy them both equally? I think I'm kind of on the middle there. I think they both have their strong points. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.